Hey, this is JC and welcome to Small Brick City. This is part 2 of building an old Lego building from start to finish. If you missed part 1, do check out the link in the card above or in the description below. The project that I'm working on is an old Lego church, and this is based on images of churches that are found all around the world. I basically looked for tiny churches or smallest churches around the world, and I based this particular build off those images. It is supposed to be an old church, so it's a bit worn out, and that's why it looks like parts are coming apart. In this case, there's actually a hole in the wall, and it is really small. It's built on a 16 by 16 base plate, but it is still minifig scale. In this video, we're going to explore how to detail the inside and outside of this old church, and we'll also explore how to create a story with this MOC. It is going to be fun and informative, so keep on watching. Let's start off with the inside of the build first. I designed this to be a modular style building, so that means the roof can be removed, but it's actually a split roof design in the sense that the bottom layer of slope bricks are actually built with the main part of the building, and only the rest of the roof can be removed just like that, and is held in place by jumper plates, which are in this case just 1x1 studs, and the rest are tiled. And that's how you hold a modular roof in place. So this is a very small build, and I built it deliberately small because this is designed to be a teaching tool, but you can of course expand this church to a full 32 by 32 base plate if you want. And if I were to expand it, basically I would make everything proportionately larger, and I would have a bigger interior. But for purposes of this video, this space will work. And since this is a church, and by the way, if you didn't watch part 1, this is the Church of Kragle, so not any particular religious church, but this is the Lego world, so this is the Church of Kragle. So let's start with the inside first, and I think the first thing I'm going to do is build 2 benches to fit in, and that's where the people would sit on. In any church you do need some kind of benches, so let's start with that. And I'm going to make them wooden, so I've got various parts here, and I'm going to build the bench. The structure of the bench, or the main support, will be using these modified clips and modified plates with a bar end, just like that, and that's a closed bar end. They'll clip together just like that, and you have 2, one on each side, and this forms the support of the bench. And you need a couple of tiles or plates to form the rest of the bench. And to build the bench, it's going to be pretty simple. I'm going to just use the brown 1x4 tiles like this, and I'm going to attach them to these modified brick and plate combinations. And you can already see the bench forming. This is quite a common technique of building a Lego bench. There are many different techniques, but I do like this one. It doesn't use too many parts, and you get this nice angle, so it's not just a straight block like that. You need a bit of feet, and that's where these 1x2 plates come in, and you add them underneath, and you get basically the feet for the bench. And now you can mount it on the inside for the base plate. And I'm going to build one more. So this one is a bit different. I've replaced one of the 1x4 tiles with a 1x4 plate, and that's so that you can put a minifig on top and they can sit down on the bench and remain attached to the bench. So now we have to place the benches inside the interior, and since this is the entrance of the church, it makes sense that the altar or whatever you have here right at the front is on this side, so the benches should face the back wall. And let's just find a spot to kind of place them in. I'm not going to attach them in firmly right now. What I'm trying to do is just to get the placement within the church, and that's because I'll be doing some detailing for the floor. I will be tiling up the floor, but I need to know the placement of the furniture and different items I'm going to place inside first in order to know where to tile around. That's generally how I do all my builds for the interior. I will always build the furniture and the different things I want to place inside. I will determine their positions so that I can then tile around those positions and then later add the furniture back inside. So that works. Now we need a pew or an altar somewhere here. So I'm going to build a simple altar using some brown parts. And let's do something like this, something really simple. We're going to make it nice and thin, so it's only going to be 1 brick wide because there's not much space. So something as simple as this. And they of course need to be, I guess, worshipping something, although I wouldn't like to use the word worship, but at least something symbolic. And since this is Lego, this red brick will suffice. Don't ask me why. Since this is the Church of Kragle, I'm not sure why there's red brick, but I think it makes sense and it gives a bit of color for the church. So that goes in the center, and you can imagine how that looks like if you compare it to a real church. Now the walls here are quite bare. So since this is a Church of Kragle, I thought it would make sense to have something that relates to the Kragle. I don't have a picture of the Kragle, so I thought maybe this map, which supposedly shows the location of the Kragle, would work. So what I need to do now is to switch out a modified brick so that I can attach this decorated tile to the wall. So that means I do have to break this up, but it shouldn't be too difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove some of these tiles, and see, this is a 1x6 brick. I need to put in a 1x1 modified brick in white, or maybe a 1x2. Yeah, this would be fine. This is a 1x1 modified brick with a stud on the side, and I'm going to put it in here so that it's basically the center. Is that the center? That's not quite the center, so that's more the center. So I'm going to place that modified brick there, and that means I can't use this 1x6 brick anymore. I have to fill up the rest of the space with a 1x2 and a 1x3 brick. This now allows me to take the decorated tile, the map to the Kragle, and place it on the wall, so it's just above the red brick, and so that at least gives something for the churchgoers to look at. Something very simple, but this is a tiny church, and I think it is very basic. Alright, notice I do have some studs on this side, and actually those are the same studs from the brick used to hold these oil lamps into place. So what I did was I used 1x2 or 1x1 modified bricks, but with studs on the front and the back, and that's why I get studs on the back here. So that means I can use the same brick for two purposes, and I felt it was important to have light in the church. So I've got more of these lights, and these are, I guess, oil lamps in the context of this particular church, and that can fit in there. But you know, I'm not going to fit them in just yet because I will have to tile the inside, and these are going to be in the way. But that's basically it. Two lamps are going to be on the inside, on the wall. So anytime you do any kind of detailing, you want to think about the furniture, you want to think about the floor, so that's the tiling for the floor, and you want to think of decorations on the walls. So basically, you want to detail as much of the interior as possible. So not just furniture and the floor, but you want to add details wherever you can. So this kind of works. I'm going to detail the inside in just a bit, and I'm going to use a variety of different gray tiles. So in my mind, basically this is an old church, and the floor is going to be made of stone, but since it's over time, different parts can be cracked, or they can be made out of different stone slabs, because over time they have to replace slabs. So that's why there can be different colors, light gray, dark gray. It adds to the texture, and the size also gives some visual difference. But before I actually even do the tiling, I like to talk a bit about the story, because to me the detail really depends on the story, and coming up with a story for any build really enhances a build. It gives justification and motivation for different detailing that you do, and how you decorate it and how you end it. So this is obviously a church. So I always think of my builds in terms of concept and detail. So the concept is a church. So that's the first step. I mean, it's the basic thing, right? What is the item you're building? What's the object you're building? In this case, the object is a church. So that's the basic concept. But what's going to happen inside the church will determine how I'm going to detail the build, or at least determine how I'm going to create the story, and which then affects the detail. So what do you normally do in a church? You could attend a mass or a session. You could attend a funeral or a wedding. So to me, a normal just church session can be a bit static or boring, in the sense that it's a bit mundane because there's nothing really interesting. When I create scenes, I always divide them into two kinds of scenes: static displays and dynamic displays. So static displays are basically things that you're just doing. It's pretty mundane, and if you look at it, as a viewer, you can see what's going on, but there's no real action going on. It's just something, an everyday occurrence. So to me, a church mass or just a congregation is pretty mundane in that sense. However, something like a funeral is a bit more dynamic because there's something going on, there's a story going on. Immediately I'll be asking, who's in that coffin, and who's attending the funeral? Why is that person dead? The same thing for a wedding. So these are dynamic scenes, and to me, dynamic scenes are more interesting for Lego because it takes a static display but makes it more interesting. It evokes questions and feelings to the viewer, and therefore makes things more interesting. And you can also create more intricate backstories for your characters, or in this case minifigs, in the build. And you can also maybe create a character for the building itself. So a building can have character, your minifigs have character, and sometimes even furniture can have character. So let's go back to the concept. I'm going to choose a wedding simply because a funeral is a bit too morbid. This is Lego, we want to keep it fun and light-hearted. So let's go with a wedding. So with a wedding, we definitely need some characters in terms of minifigs, and I do have a pretty bride. And this comes from that bridal set that Lego has put out. So here we have the bride. Now, to make things interesting, and this goes again with the concept. So since I'm going to do a wedding, I could do a very straightforward wedding, but then I'm taking a dynamic scene and making it a bit mundane, a bit boring. So if I were to show you this particular minifig, you would expect to see the minifig that came with her in the set, or at least you expect to see someone equally well dressed and very smart, ready to marry her. However, remember, this is an old church. It's a very tiny church, and it would seem strange to get married in such a small church, unless maybe you're trying to elope, which means you're trying to run away and you do not want to let anyone know. You do not want to let anyone know you are getting married. So she should be marrying someone a bit different, and in this case I've chosen this guy over here. If you watch my previous building an office building from scratch, you'll recognize this fellow. He's actually the owner of Brickstar Interior Designers. He's Robin. He is a very strange dude, but he's fallen in love with this girl and they want to get married, but it seems that her dad doesn't approve, so they have to get eloped, or they have to elope, and which is why they found this tiny church to get married. Now, in this case, since we have this couple getting married, we do need someone to marry them, and we need some kind of official. I'm not going to call him a priest, I'll just call him an official for this church. And we have this guy over here. Ignore his expression for now. That's his official looking attire. He's also a sheriff part-time, but he's got a holy book, or a book where he's going to sign off their marriage. But actually he doesn't really approve of the marriage because this girl's dad doesn't approve of the marriage. That's what a story I came up with. So our very enterprising Robin, who's a very successful interior designer, he's an award-winning interior designer. He has basically slipped this official some money to make sure that he marries them off. So seems quite interesting now. There are many things going on. We have a very electric bride and groom. We have an official who's being paid off to sign them off. But you're probably wondering, why is he giving this kind of an expression, which is, I guess he looks like he's scared or he's in shock. Well, that's because we need one more antagonist, and we've got this guy over here. A very fierce looking guy, and he is the father of the bride, and he basically is trying to come in to stop the wedding. And obviously this official has kind of seen that he's in the vicinity, or he's very nearby, or he might have even seen him, so he's actually scared. Oh, there's one more fella we need actually. Now if it's a wedding, we do need a witness. So the couple needed a witness. They couldn't find anyone, but luckily Robin made a friend recently, and you can find out who that is if you watch the previous video as well, and I'll link that in the card at the top of the screen or in the description. And his friend is this homeless dude who he found recently sleeping in the bed of his display window. So he's gotten the homeless dude to become his witness for his wedding. So we've got the character set. As you can see, that's quite an interesting story. So now we have to place them into the build to communicate that story, so that if someone were to look down, they can see the different characters, and if you have to give a slight explanation, they can see what's going on, and it is pretty funny. And oh, you see the building is a part of the character. Remember, there was a hole here. So to me this makes sense, because previously this girl's always wanting to marry guys that her dad doesn't want. So this is actually her second or third time trying to get married. In previous times, her dad has chased the groom away, and they actually broke through from the inside of the church to escape from the dad. And that hasn't been fully repaired except for this plank. So now that I've created the story, I thought of the concept first, in this case the church. I thought of the main activity in terms of the wedding, and I came up with the characters and the story to make it interesting. With that in mind, I now know that I need to place several of these figures inside, and therefore I need jumper plates, which are basically studs on the ground, so that I can stand these figures in the correct positions. If not, you would tile everything smooth and there's no way to actually place a minifig on. So I do know that at the front, just in front of the altar, I'll need jumper plates for the bride, for the groom, and for the official. The homeless guy, he's the witness, and he can be drunk sleeping on the bench or something. The dad, to me, he's right here on the outside looking in, and he's trying to smash through the door of the church, and that's why the official sees him through the window of the door, and that's why he's reacting like that. So that's basically the story. That's basically what I've thought of, and now I can detail the inside. I'm going to use these towels, as I said, but I've got some jumper plates, and I'm going to put everything down and we'll see what happens. And here we have the interior of the church, completely tiled in different colors and shapes. Different colors, at least I'm still using light gray and dark gray, although I do have some black round tiles there. That's just to break it up and to give a very chaotic look to this old church. I do have to put the altar back in place in front. I removed this section of the wall just to make it easier to do the tiling. But now I can place the minifigs inside. So let's do that, and let's start off with the bride. It is going to be a tight squeeze, but I'm sure we can fit everyone in. We have the groom, which will be next to her. Let's turn her just a bit. They should be facing each other. The witness, let's have him drunk, sitting down. Okay, it's bottle dropped. We'll put the bottle onto the bench as well. So let's fit him in first. Maybe he can be sleeping against the corner. Yeah, I always have to try to fit the studs into his ass. That's the toughest part. He's got the holes. That's okay. That's fine. And let's put this bottle on the bench next to him on the exposed stud. And of course we have the official, who we will place here, and he has to face the door. It's a really tight squeeze because this is such a small build, but I believe we can fit everyone in. Again, if you're building a much bigger space, of course you won't run into this trouble, but this is just for kind of a demonstration purpose, and let's fit them in. That works. All right, really small. He faces the door, as you can see. So later on, when we take the angry father with the pickaxe and place him here, he can actually see him through that door. So that all makes sense. I'm going to add the 2 oil lamps, which I mentioned earlier. I've pre-built them, and they are identical to the ones on the outside. That goes there, and this will attach to the wall. Now the only thing which I suspected is that they hang very low. In fact, that's too low for comfort, so Mr. Homeless Guy would actually knock his head against the lamp. But that's okay. What we need to do is kind of a redesign. So I'm going to invert the lamps, but I will have to change this particular stud from a regular stud to one with a hole. So I'll need something just like that. So that allows me to place it inside, and I can place the tap element into that hole. So I've now inverted it, and I just hope that it still fits underneath the roof. And does it? It does not. It actually hits now the roof itself, the slope piece. So what if I were to remove this top part and just put in a stud? Let's see if that works. Could be the transparent Lego head itself that's a bit too big, but I think, yeah, that's not ideal. But you know, I'm going to let it fly for this particular build. Typically, if this happens, I would then change this transparent element maybe to a cone, not a cone, but a cylinder, so that would be less wide and it will not hit this. But for now, let's just stick to that. So I'm going to do the same for this one. I'm going to switch it up so that this stud comes here. The stud with the hole goes underneath it, and the tap element can be placed inside, and this can fit here as well. All right, so a bit slanted, but maybe this decanted look fits this worn out church as well, since everything is not perfect. With that in place, we've got the decorations inside, nice and cozy ceremony going on. We can rebuild the church, so I'm going to place all these parts back. And the inside of the church is virtually done. I'm quite happy with that. So now we have to go on the outside. So for the outside, we will be doing something similar. We will be doing some tiling. We're going to add some greenery. And then of course we have to add the angry father. So let's get started. I'm going to start off with tiling this front over here. Again, I'm going to use these light gray and dark gray tiles, and I'm going to go with more circles this time, but I do want a stud for the father to stand on, so I'll use a small 1x2 jumper plate, and let's just place that maybe here. We want him relatively close to the door, so let's just do that, and then we'll work around it. Let's take a couple of these round tiles in different colors, and let's work them into the design. So let's have one light one here, and again I'm just creating a haphazard pattern, just like that, and I'm going to fill in the space with other random tiles. So I've added a bunch of different tiles, as you can see, again different colors, different shape, almost a continuation from the inside. Let's see if I can put the angry dad here. I probably can. His pickaxe is almost going to go through the door, but I do want to add something. I need to add a doorknob here, and I've got a towel that I'm going to use. So I'm not just going to use a stud or a towel, I'm going to use a decorated towel in the form of a lock. because that's why the dad has to use his pickaxe, because the door is locked, he can't get in. So let's just place the lock tile on the door. So now we have a locked church door, and we can take the dad, kind of angle his pickaxe into the door, and that's why the official is so scared. Well, he dropped his pickaxe. Let's try that again. So let's kind of put that in there. Let's stand the dad. Come on, stand the dad. Maybe that's the name of him, Stan. Okay, so stand. Can you stand? This obviously isn't fun video, so there we go. We have him now right there inside, and we can imagine him looking into the church. All right, let's finish up this side over here. I'm definitely going to use these two pieces. These are picket fence pieces, and that adds so much, so simply. And we of course want to add greenery. There's some space here which I can add greenery, so let's do that first. Let's replace a missing tile here, and I'm going to get into this box with all my little green parts, and let's just randomly add some things wherever's the space. So anytime I do nature, and I've mentioned this before, we kind of want a chaotic mess. We want randomness. Yeah. So I'm going to use these studs. I'm going to fill up the space all around, and then I'm going to add in some plant parts if I can. So here we have a bit of an overgrown look, but a lot of greenery all around, and around the church as well. Not much I can place here just due to the space limitation, but you get the idea. I think this adds to the overall look of this old church. All right, there's one more thing we have to build, and it is of course the Kragle. What I want to do is to add a Kragle on top of the steeple right over here. In a regular church you would have a cross, but this is the Church of Kragle, so I need a Kragle. Now, one of the Lego sets from the Lego movie, the first one, came with a Kragle, but that was really large. It would be too large for this one, so I have to kind of make a simulation of a Kragle, and I'm going to use some parts that I have over here. You have to use some creative interpretation, but I think if you know it's a Kragle, you definitely recognize it. If not, you'll think it's a rocket or something. But I'm going to use these parts. I didn't have the bright green or the regular green. I'm using this dark green. And I'm going to just put these elements together. And I want to create that indent. So I'm going to use these curved tile pieces and this cheese wedge. So this looks like the bend in the Kragle, you know, when you press the super glue, it comes out. So that's what it's supposed to look like. This will be the cap, which will go on top like that. And for the back, I'm going to hold it in place with this modified plate with a closed bar element and a corresponding modified plate with a clip. So this actually goes on top, and I've got a jumper plate on the top of the steeple, so that allows me then to put this directly on top, which I'll do right now. And there you have, that's the Kragle, and that's the Church of Kragle. I hope you enjoyed this mini series of building an old Lego building from start to finish, and I hope you like this Church of Kragle. What do you think? Do you think all the elements have come together to form an old church with these ingot pieces in front decanted, all the different tilings as well to create that dilapidated look, and the tiling in the front, the overgrown vegetation, and of course the overall proportion and look of this particular MOC? Personally, my favorite parts are the bell and just the overall look of the build as well. The Kragle, I'm pretty satisfied with what I've done. I don't think it's perfect, it's far from perfect in fact, but I think it actually represents a mini Kragle. What do you think? Let me know in the comments as well. On the inside, we have the young couple who's eloping, we've got the homeless guy as the witness, and we've got the official who's trying to sign off on the marriage but is terrified by the father who is right at the door of the church. I hope you enjoyed this little story, and I've showed how you can come up with a story based on the concept of your build and how that affects your detailing. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that some of the techniques and ideas I shared will be useful for you and you can apply them to your own MOCs. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.